After this, Ricky joked that the Golden Globes ceremony was too long and said that people should instead watch his show Afterlife, a story about a depressed man whose wife dies of cancer. He revealed that the main character does not kill himself.
Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
Another elephant in the room so rudely acknowledged. Jeffrey Epstein, the man who was definitely not suicided by external forces as a preventative measure. No doubt everybody in the room was safe in the knowledge that there was nothing suspicious about Epstein's death, which is why they don't feel the need to speak openly about it. Certainly, it's not that there is a code of silence that the rich and powerful Hollywood elite abide by, and any suggestion to the contrary is ludicrous. More on that later. The biggest truth bomb of the night came when Ricky spoke about Apple entering the streaming game with The Morning Show, which Ricky described as
a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and so it's already 3 hours long.
This was glorious to watch. Ricky torched his audience of liberal elitists to smithereens and said what so many people have been thinking and saying for several years now. Balls to the wall, he called out the sheer hypocrisy of Hollywood celebrities who grandstand and lecture everybody on how to live, believing themselves to be experts on every matter of socio-political and environmental significance, while simultaneously breaking the codes of conduct that they encourage everybody else to live by. Those who virtue signal about the latest PC issue du jour, superficially voicing their support for action to be taken to combat climate change, while simultaneously flying around the globe in private jets dozens of times every year. Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, was in attendance, and although we weren't treated to a shot of his reaction, we can imagine that he wasn't best pleased with Ricky's observation. Hopefully Tim Cook, the anti-free speech authoritarian, won't decide that Ricky's criticism of Apple's commercial practices qualifies as hate speech, which he is determined to bring an end to. Although Ricky warned the audience not to get political during their acceptance speeches, Michelle Williams felt obliged, as a modern-day empowered feminist, to promote abortion and encourage women to vote in their own self-interest, pro-abortion being the approved position to hold in liberal Hollywood, and Williams' speech, of course, was met with whoops and cheers from the crowd, even tears of joy from one audience member who found the speech truly inspiring. It's been obvious for a very long time now. There is something rotten at the core of Hollywood. There is an obvious political bias and an agenda to massage public attitudes towards certain issues. Big blockbuster films more closely resemble propaganda than meaningful stories. The superficiality of the moralizing has become unbearable, and perhaps worst is the insufferable narcissism. Ordinary people are tired of being lectured to by a bunch of self-satisfied, self-important, narcissistic, hypocritical Hollywood celebrities who are completely detached from reality. They live in a bubble, and when they were in need of a prick, Ricky Gervais stepped forward. He took corporate giants to task, along with the woke, virtue-signaling celebrities that willingly sign up to work for those companies in return for a hefty paycheck. Apple, Amazon, Disney, all have horrendous reputations for upholding the basic right of their employees. Amazon, of course, won't allow its workers to unionize and treats its warehouse workers like workhorses. Later on in the show, Ricky described the film Bird Box as a movie where people survive, by acting like they don't see a thing. Sort of like working for Harvey Weinstein. When Harvey Weinstein was exposed, Hollywood took measures to control the damage and save face by hijacking the Me Too phrase in a genius move that made them look virtuous by championing a noble cause, as well as victims. Many of the actors conveniently forgot all the words of praise they had lavished on Harvey over the years at award ceremonies, and the fact that they had turned a blind eye to his perverse practices, allowing him to continue his debauchery unchallenged over the decades, consequently putting more young actresses at risk, and Ricky reminded them of that fact. The teens were a strange decade. Political correctness and social justice ideology spread like cancer, infecting everything that they came into contact with, but it is worth remembering that it was only a small but very loud minority of radical far-left authoritarians that demanded society change so dramatically. They had learned that to get their own way, all they had to do was use their arsenal of words that hold negative connotations, racist, bigoted, homophobia, etc., to scare people into superficially agreeing with them. As soon as they described something as offensive, action would be taken to appease them, works would be removed, and transgressors would be forced to apologize. But the power-hungry arbiters of morality were never satisfied. They demanded more and more changes be made. Their demands became more ridiculous. Soon a small faction of radicals asserted that there were an infinite number of genders and started demanding that they be referred to by new gender pronouns. Others attempted to dictate what Halloween costumes were acceptable. The idea of transgender children was put forward, but very few people spoke out in opposition, because they had recognized that opposition would not be tolerated. Teachers were fired after being found to have misgendered students, and police officers openly revealed their intention to check the thinking of British citizens when they exhibited wrongthink. As more corporations felt it necessary to jump on board the woke bandwagon and align themselves with PC ideals, what would previously have been considered absurd soon became part of the mainstream, and everyone was expected to bend the knee. Even stating scientific facts that contradicted PC ideology was considered a just reason to end employment and destroy careers. A climate of fear and practice of self-censorship was established, as people were aware of the threat of serious ramifications for refusing to toe the line. Much like in the days of the old Soviet Union, people lived in a constant state of fear. Thankfully, Ricky Gervais is a highly successful actor, writer, and comedian. He has achieved financial security, and for this reason he is liberated and able to speak honestly. He can say no. And he did say no, publicly, and in doing so challenged the authority of the radical far left and revealed that they only hold power because the masses have, out of fear, granted it to them. But as soon as the child declares that the emperor has no clothes, the spell is broken, and people are freed to articulate what they quietly knew to be true. Gervais came to prominence for creating the mockumentary sitcom The Office. The series achieved tremendous success because the viewing public recognized the truth inherent in the show. They were familiar with the office politics and bureaucracy. The public recognized the legitimacy of the characters. The show was rooted in reality, and it was Ricky's astute representation of real life in a typical office that made the show so popular. There was no sparkle, no special effects. It was truthful. This is where Hollywood has failed, and where Ricky Gervais succeeded. He stripped away the facade to reveal ugly truths. In the teens, a small number of rebels, the online community of kek boys, red-pilled content creators, and a few academics stepped forward to hold the line. They opposed radical ideology and spoke in defense of logic and reason, often giving others the motivation to denounce PC ideology and speak honestly. Now, in the 2020s, more people will join the fight. This will be a decade in which the cultural war will reach its pinnacle. The social justice warriors will fight for their lives, and they'll try to smear and manipulate language and bully. But ultimately, they will be beaten by the vocal majority, who will have taken inspiration from Ricky's refreshing attitude. I don't care.
And it's a very different time now, a much more socially sensitive time, shall we say. A lot of different movements have happened. Does that change your approach, or do you think about that when you're writing jokes?
It's a great time for comedy. So it's because they've given away their hand. 10 years ago when someone was offended by something, you'd looked into it. You went, oh, what have I done? Now you go, everyone's offended. Who cares?